my lovely listeners. Welcome back to DRL, where we're talking everything dating, relationships, and love. So I just got back from a week-long trip to Minnesota. You guys know that's where I'm from. And I hung out with a lot of old friends who just happened to be there around the same time. They don't necessarily live there, but they were just visiting, and so it worked out. And I was thinking about, I have a friend, Jody. Jody and I have been friends for literally 25 years. We met in 6th grade. And I was thinking about how, all the things that our friendship has survived. We've gone actual years without, speaking. And our friendship has survived that. And we've come back, and we've been stronger than we were in the first place. And I thought about if that works for relationships. Do you think that it's possible to be in a relationship, really take some time apart, and have it come back and work? Or is it different in relationships? Once you take that break, it's over. And if that's the case, why can't it be like that? Why can't people say, you know what? I have some growing to do. I have some things I have to change. Let's take a break and come back together. So I want to know if anybody out there has actually ever done that, and if you think it's possible. So hit me up at Tanisha Wood. Let me know on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So just curious about that. So today I have PJ with me. Do you actually prefer Philip or PJ?
PJ's fine.
PJ.
PJ's
okay.
actually what I really go by.
Okay. So I just finally caught up on Power because I was late. And PJ, when I had met PJ, he was like, I was in this episode. So I was literally, I was watching for you the whole episode. Uh-huh. So I'm waiting to see it. But
I'm hoping it's going to be in the next one. It should be either in 502 or 503.
Because then I'm going to screenshot it and then post it on Instagram. I know that guy. I know that guy. I'm that person.
All right. Yeah, okay.
So how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
I'm doing really good. I'm excellent, actually. I can't say it enough how I'm in such a transformative part of my life, and just really happy.
Yeah. So I met PJ a couple weeks ago at my friend Kaz's birthday party.
Shout out to Kaz.
Hey, Kaz. And you were saying that you felt like you were just in such a different place than you were last year, because he quit his job and decided to pursue acting full time. So he took a huge risk.
A huge leap of faith.
And it's paying off because I'm over here watching for him on Power.
Things like that doesn't happen overnight. So, but I never thought it would actually happen I want to say as quick as it's been happening.
Yeah.
But you still have to work at it. So
I love a good quick corporate story. That's my favorite story, when somebody's just so I just said I'm done. And then I did me. And then it worked.
And I did it on Juneteenth, which was the most important thing to me, because I actually wanted to do it on a birthday anniversary of my first partner, and since his passing years ago, I always, every year on July 17th, I dedicate
do something big
for him, just like I do almost every other day because I'm still, but. It ended up being on July 19th, which was the day that I just said, you know what, I can't do this anymore.
Can we talk about this first love a little bit?
We can talk about everything.
Okay, so
I am an open
Tell me about this
novel.
first love, because clearly he's still a special part of your life because you dedicate something to him every year.
Clarence Edward Towns Jr.
What a name.
Yeah, right.
All presidential. Clarence Edward Towns Jr.
Towns.
Right.
He was 10 years older than me. We met when I was 20. He was the first love I've ever had. And Junior, which is he's lovingly known as, was... So I whenever I actually discuss him, I get the same kind of feeling, because I feel like he was my soulmate in a sense. We met and we instantly clicked, and then we were together for 3 years. He was diagnosed with cancer in June 14th of 2003, and then passed away September 28th of that same year.
Wow, so it was really quick.
It was very quick. They diagnosed him with testicular cancer, which he did not have testicular cancer. So the chemotherapy that the hospital initiated giving him is really what killed him. remember, chemo is just poison going into your body.
Yeah.
To kill that, but it has its own repercussions.
Right.
And I just slowly watched him die.
Oh.
He was just the best thing that has ever happened to me, still present day. And that's like, I was 22 when I was 22 going on 23 when he died.
How old are you now?
I am now 37. Listen to that. 22 going on 23 and now 37, and still nothing has ever come close. And not because he was my first love, but because just no one has ever made me feel that way.
Is that tough then, being in relationships, having that sort of comparison, or just...
It's really tough. And what I tend to, what I had to learn to not do is compare. So everybody's different. He was a Cancer. I'm a Libra. Technically speaking, Cancers and Libras it's a really hard match. Cancers are extremely oversensitive. Libras are very aloof. And your emotions, I'm so sorry that you feel that way, but that's not the way it is. But it worked for us. And at the same time, for our age difference and myself being so young and learning so much, he was very much, I do have daddy issues, but he wasn't like daddy. You know what I mean? He was like the person I looked up to, the person I loved, because he loved me, and everybody who knew of us, whoever met us individually and collectively, they've all said the same thing. He loved the hell out of you. And when Junior passed, I was always by his side. Always. However, the first time that I went to, because he was like, go get some rest. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. There was no couch or anything on the floor or chair in the room at university. Well, then this was Beth Israel, a.k.a. Death Israel, in Newark, New Jersey. And so I went downstairs. After a while, his sister was there. She's like, go get some rest. I went downstairs and finally took a nap. Mm-hmm. I needed it. His name was now being called on a loudspeaker. He had coded. So just imagine, I've never left your side, but the moment I do is the moment you die. They brought him back. And I, was just going through all these emotions as a 22-year-old. And then everybody, once they brought him back, he, when someone, and I don't know if anybody's ever experienced being in a room when someone is brought back to life and they're hooked up to a machine.
I haven't.
It's terrifying. And they put wires everywhere. Like, for a man, they'll put it in his urethra. For a female, they'll put it in your vagina where, your kitty cat.
Right.
I mean, and just imagine the shock of it. So the first thing that you want to do is pull everything out. Right. And I saw that look of terror on his face. And then when he finally calmed down and then he was giving thumbs up and everything, one of my best friends, she flown in from California immediately. And then my other friend, Cookie, she was there, but she had to get back home. Because she had her best friend Toya was watching her son, and then Toya had to get back home to her kids. So I drove Cookie back home. And in the meantime of me driving her back home, I had like a couple of drinks because I was like so like over it.
Right.
Like I just was going through so much. So his best friend, Junior's best friend Eric, called me and said, "You need to get back here now. They're about to pull the plug." And I'm like, they can't pull the plug because I'm not there. That was the power of attorney. I had this kind of leeway, but at the same time, back then in 2003, gay marriage, gay rights wasn't what it is today.
Right.
So on my way back there, they pulled it. So this is the second time that I was not there when he died.
Oh my gosh.
So I held on to that guilt of being gone.
With Junior's passing, how and him having the place that he had in your life, how did you get to a place where you could have a relationship and not sort of compare it? Like, what was the process of that? Saying, this person is not Junior, but that was a separate relationship and they're not to be compared. Because I think we're all guilty of that, That might be on a different level because of his passing, but I think we're all guilty of saying, my ex did X, Y, and Z.
Right,
and maybe the relationship didn't end the way we wanted it to, or, we saw more potential there. But we all sort of do go around in life comparing to the last best thing we had, whether that be a job or a friend or a man or a woman or whatever it may be. But the thing that that's how you figure out where things are at, is you compare them. You say, well, this is better than that, this is worse than this, and that's sort of how you gauge where things land, is by comparing them to the last or the best thing.
Right. I think for me, and I can only obviously speak for myself, my issue was a little bit deeper than just surfaced, because I had my own issues. I had parent issues that, parents didn't approve of me being a homosexual, and they kicked me out even the second time, when he passed away, and I had to stay with them, and they didn't want me there because I was still a gay guy. And you can't live here if you're going to be this way. Well, all of a sudden somebody just died. I'm not going to just all of a sudden now turn on a flick a switch and just be straight. But that's another story. When he passed, I immediately jumped into another relationship. And when I say immediately, I mean like months later.
Right.
And I did not allow myself the time to grieve. And I took everything out on him. Everything. To the point where I would wake up and look at him like he told me years later that how much of an asshole. He's like, you were an asshole. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
Because you were mad that he wasn't Junior. Mm-hmm. Like you woke up mad, like,
who are you? Why are you
still
here?
This random person?
Who
You're
are you?
not
You're
Junior.
Not, you're not supposed to be here. Who are you? Or I would disappear at times and not tell him. I was the worst I have ever been to anyone to him, and he didn't deserve that. However, he asked for that. And I say that because when I met him, I was picking up my best friend from work, and I just said, something, I just need a homo with low self-esteem. And he was in ear view of that. Yeah, how funny that is. And it's so funny because
please don't tell me he raised his hand like I'm it.
He didn't raise his hand, but he was like, "Can I have your number?" Before I left. Like he's like, ooh. And come to find out, he had his own issues with his previous relationships.
Right.
He was used to being beaten in his relationship. So he thought that I didn't love him one time when we were arguing because I didn't hit him. He's like, why won't you hit me? You don't care about me. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Let's have a conversation. So
you were both in a place of just not being healthy mentally.
Right. So then after that, I met my ex. Years later, actually. I met him at 25. I did my thing in between then, and I was quite busy. I say this because, even though I wasn't in a relationship, then I became a sex addict.
Right.
And that was my form of grieving, because that was the only thing that made me feel good. And it wasn't smart. It wasn't wise.
So at this point, you were just sort of avoiding the grief. So you went from, okay, let me jump right into another relationship with somebody I probably shouldn't be in a relationship with. Okay, that's done. Now let me just go from person to person. Okay, just avoiding even being in that space of true grief.
Until one day I saw someone that looked just like Junior on the train. And I just bawled crying on the train. I stared at this man and made him so uncomfortable. And I just cried. I mean, he looked just like him. And I took a picture and sent it to my aunt and my cousins, and they were like, "Oh my God!" And he looked just like him.
Wow!
And I needed that.
Have you been in love since then?
I have. I mean, I'm fresh out of I wouldn't say fresh, but my last relationship was about approximately 6 to 8 years. That's how long it lingered.
Are you a serial monogamous?
What do you mean?
Like a person who gets in long-term relationships?
No, actually, no. Well, I wouldn't say serial monogamous, meaning that it's not something that...
And I don't think that's a bad thing, by the way.
No, I know.
The term sounds badly.
The term does sound...
Serial killer. Serial monogamous.
No, I look at it like this. I come from a family of everyone who's gotten together stayed together.
Okay.
So it's important. So that's my foundation. My mother stayed married with the man who raised me as my father. He met my mother when she was pregnant with me.
Oh, wow.
And he stayed with her they stayed together until he passed away a few years ago.
Wow.
My grandparents stayed together, my aunt and my uncle, even both of them, even though one of my aunts and uncles, their relationship is like, y'all hate each other, don't y'all? They'll cuss each other out.
Well, we are going to stay together, though.
But they love each other
Right.
like unconditionally. So I have that foundation of once I say I want you, then that's it.
Right.
But I can't control what the other person feels or thinks.
Right.
So if the other person doesn't see it that way, then it gets lost in translation. The last relationship, like I said, we were together for quite some time. And I loved the hell out of him.
You guys were together for 8 years?
We were together for 6.5 until I said I can't do this anymore. And for me to do that is like, I can't do this
Why
anymore.
couldn't you do it anymore?
Well, he wasn't honest. He wasn't honest with himself. And it wasn't like he was a pathological liar, even though he kind of was. It was more that he didn't know who he was. And everything that he was going through in that moment, both emotionally and physically, he didn't know how to channel it properly. And I was trying to be there to help. And you know, there's one thing about a Libra, and if anybody who's listening can tell you,
you sign people or something.
We are.
Anytime somebody does something, you know they did that because they're a Libra, right?
Right.
Because that's something Libras do. That's how Libras act.
Well, this one was a Taurus, so you see how everybody just said, "Oh," who was listening. The one thing, and he did. The one thing that we do not do as Libras is we don't like to be broke. Mm-hmm. And it's not that we want money and we crave it like that, but what we won't do is struggle.
The security.
Yeah, it's important. And it came down to one day where there was an option to buy a car or pay rent, which I didn't know. That was the question. Mm-hmm. I didn't know rent wasn't paid. And instead, we bought a Mercedes. And a month and so later, by the way, we have to pay past dues rent. That should have been taken care of. And to make a longer story, just a little bit shorter, it was blame placed. So it's your fault that I didn't tell you that the rent wasn't paid because I didn't trust you. Which makes no sense because you didn't trust me because you're insecurity versus trusting me because of financial stability.
So you guys really just had different ideas about how life should be lived. Because I think that's one of those fundamental things where people just think differently on it. Like, so some people are just like, I live for today. And if today a Mercedes makes me feel great, well, that's what I'm gonna do. And some people are like, I'm really thinking about the future. And
so here's the interesting thing. I'm a person that lives in the moment. Mm-hmm. I believe in the moment. So this is the contradictory part about it. That person was what foundation is this going to set going forward? Mm-hmm. In that moment, though, we didn't financially plan for this. We were making actually good money, and he was making more than me. But there's no need for us to live check to check.
Right.
You know what I mean? Especially in a single household,
right?
With no real serious big bills except for no kids or anything, but like dogs. When I realized that the rent wasn't paid and I was being blamed for it, which was absurd, I just couldn't do it anymore. I had already checked out a while ago, but I stuck around because he needed somebody there at that moment. Without putting his business out there, which is what I don't do.
Right.
He needed somebody there in the moment, and I didn't want to abandon him because I already knew he had abandonment issues.
Right.
So and this is the thing that I always say all the time when it comes to when you understand the psychology of some people, you can't really get mad at why they do what they do
because you understand the root of it.
I understand it,
and you understand the things that they do are just a symptom of the root cause
trauma that it was experienced as a childhood. You're just acting like an adult. I mean, I Googled and researched, and you're giving all the traits of an adult that was treated this way as a child. Mm-hmm. And I just said I couldn't. I kept him covered under my health insurance for another 2 years after I left.
Wow.
I mean, I loved him.
Yeah.
And love is important to me. And there were a lot of different things that were going on. And I'm not going to act like I was a perfect angel, but I never cheated. I never stepped out. I did reach out for attention because I wasn't getting it at home. And that is a Libra trait, unfortunately. I'm really not proud of that. We do crave attention. And at least let me know that you see me.
Right.
That's the only thing I want, is to be seen. We've talked about this recently. Very recently, actually.
You and him?
I had him on my show. We had a conversation.
This is after the breakup.
This is actually the first time I've seen him in many years.
Wow.
And I was nervous because I left.
So you guys hadn't, when you left, there was no communication after that?
Hardly any.
Okay, so just logistics kind of stuff.
Yeah, like we talked a little bit here and there. I knew what was going on with him. He kind of knew what was going on with me.
So do you feel like after that conversation on your podcast, you guys are in a good place now?
We're in a good place where we can actually, like, it was the interesting thing that it was actually recorded the day before it would have been our, like, anniversary.
Wow.
Right. So the next day he texted me happy friendsversary.
That was cute.
Yeah, like, you know, he's making effort. And for years I had so much rage and anger, and I took all of that out on other people. Like,
in other relationships?
I never dated anybody. I haven't dated anybody in 5 years.
Really?
So he was the last person I dated. He was the last person.
Oh, so you were really holding on to some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and now I'm finally at a completely different space. Like, and this is like even before when you and I met, I wasn't there yet. Like I am now because we finally had that face-to-face
right,
conversation.
like you needed to.
And it was a face-to-face. We've talked before, but texting and phone conversations, they're not different. The same. Like the energy in the room.
Right.
You know, and at the same time, back then I was very much of a person where what you're not going to do.
What you not going to do.
On today is any of that. But I let it go on. So there was a portion of my life when it was him because I was 25 to 32. 25, 32, and then lingered for a little bit longer. Where whatever opinion I had, it was not valued. And I allowed that. And I realized I gave up all of my power.
Right.
So in these 5 years, the thing that I've learned is I was in a situation where I gave up all my power, so I had no power. So that means that my opinion didn't matter. I didn't have any feelings. So going forward,
how did you give up your power?
Just said okay.
So there were things that you saw happening that you didn't like or didn't agree with, and you just sort of let it go.
Let it go. Just like
after a while, that was expected that you would just let things go, and then when you didn't, it was like, whoa, why are you acting so out of character? And
right. Like, you know how the comment, the phrase of sweeping everything under the rug.
Yep.
The rug can only look flat for so long.
Right.
You know, after a while, now there's a little mountain that you have to actually deal with because there's a lot of dirt and shit under there, and it was one of those things where after that, since I gave him all of my power and all of my opinions I felt like didn't matter going forward, my opinion was now the only thing that mattered.
Right.
You know, because I never felt valued before. And which doesn't take away, and this is the thing that we all have to learn, you know, through the love languages and things like that. Just because I didn't feel like you loved me does not mean you didn't love me.
Right.
You just didn't love me the way I needed to know, like the way I needed to be loved.
Yeah. And that also like speaks to how important I think it is in the beginning of a relationship to not in any way like mask who we really are. Mm-hmm, right. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to sweep something under the rug in the beginning because you're like, you know what? Like they probably didn't mean it like that. It's no big deal. Like, let me just let this one go. I mean, and then people start to think that that's who you are. And not only that's who you are, that you're okay with something. And maybe not only even that you're okay with it, but that you like it. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's like, oh, okay. If you don't say something the first time and the second time, and then all of a sudden it becomes who you are. And then when you speak against that, the person on the other end gets so confused because they're like, what are you talking about? Like, I thought you liked that because you never said anything the first 10 times I did it. So I think we're all guilty of that because in the beginning, like we don't want to stir the pot. We just are like, it's fine. I love this person. They love me. But it's so important, I think, to come into a relationship being exactly who you are, like flaws and all, and saying like, yeah, I don't like that. Like, I'm sorry. And like, let's discuss it right now because it's going to come back up. Like when you mask something, it will come back up and it will come back up worse.
I mean, I can think of and I went to therapy in the meantime. I mean, I've gone to therapy since Junior's passing. So, I mean, I have a regular therapist at that time, and then sporadically I would just go, and then now I just need a new one. But during the breakup, I did speak with my old one, and I had a couple of sessions. And I really had to pinpoint and think about moments that had happened in the past that really made me acknowledge when did you shut down? Why did you shut down?
Right.
And I mean, I can think of one specific one that was the turning point was when I was talking about my brother had graduated from high school. Now, my mother's relationship with my parents was a little estranged at this time. And he was graduating from high school. You know, in Union, New Jersey, they only provided a certain amount of tickets, and then everybody else had to go into the other room, like the auditorium, as opposed and watch it on the screen, as opposed to being there.
It's like when you get bad seats at a Beyonce concert.
Okay, and you're sitting there looking at the screen, but you're looking at the screen still from so far away.
That was me at Coachella. Like, people were like, how was Beyonce? I'm like, I mean, I saw it on the screen just like you did, because I was like way back.
Way back there. You gonna put that where? Back there. Shout out to Vivica Fox. But so what happened was she didn't get me a ticket. So I had called him one day, and he was at work, and I was telling him about it. The irony of this right now.
Is that your brother? Oh, it's your mom.
My mother is actually calling me at this moment.
Mom, I just need to let you know I'm still mad about them graduation tickets.
So I told him, I was telling him about it. And his response was, like, I was telling him, you know, I'm really hurt. Like, I'm really, like, actually crying. And his response was, I don't want to hear this right now. I'm having a really good day. I had a conversation with one of my other cousins who's, shout out to you, RJ. He lives in California. And he was like, girl, that's just the way he talked. But he was like, you had someone who treated you like a king to go to someone who treated you like a court jester. You know your worth. What is it that you want? And that conversation like snapped you back into reality. And then I realized even though I'm not verbally comparing you, I am still comparing you. Right. Because you're not defining what love is, what that love was, but not what love is. You understand what I'm saying? Right. Like my definition at the time was still based on that. I can't base everything off of that because that was one person. Right. Our interaction is different. So since then, I haven't dated anybody since I made a decision in 2012 to leave right after Thanksgiving. And now in 2018, I am actually ready to fully date someone.
What makes you feel ready now? How do you know you're ready now?
I think what makes me feel ready now, I've learned so much from other people. The lessons that we all learn from each other helps us grow. Now I'm at a point where I know that I can possibly be, and I don't want to be, this is in my head. I'm saying these words before they're coming out because I was just about to say, I know I can be what Junior was to me to someone else. And I can't do that because that's still not valid. That's just, you're still holding on to that. I know the mistakes that I've made. And I know that I understand people a lot better now. And I don't judge anymore. I don't hold things against people. And I am not angry anymore at my ex. I'm not angry anymore at the situation. I'm not angry anymore at the time wasted or the time, because it wasn't wasted. It was a lot of lessons that needed to be learned. Yeah. And I'm not angry. That's the main thing. That's how I know I'm ready. I'm not angry anymore.
Right. I think the key to know when you're not angry at a person anymore is when you can actually have a conversation. You start to see them as a person just like anybody else, and a person you have a history with, but like you're not holding a grudge. It's just like, you could see their side. You don't necessarily agree with it, but you could say, I could see how in that moment, based on where you were at, where I was at, where you come from, where I come from, why you would have reacted the way that you react, and you humanize them. But when you're angry, like you're in that moment of anger, it's just like, you inhumane alien from another planet.
Okay,
and you can't see them as a person. Like, and it's hard.
That takes so much time. And the I think the struggle that I had before then, because I mean, we're gonna bring this back again as a Libra.
You know how them Libras are.
Yeah, what we have a tendency. We play both sides. It takes a long time for us to make a decision.
Libras are the ones with the scales?
Yeah, we're the indecisive ones.
Yeah.
Okay, and we are indecisive, but once we've made a choice and a decision, we've made it because we weighed all options. There were moments where I can see his side, or I can see why you feel that way. Like, we would have arguments about things, and I'm like, I can understand why you see this that way, but you're wrong. That's not what it is. So what I need for you to do is not be so focused on how you feel and what you think it is, and fact of what it actually is. I've always been one to be able to put myself in other people's shoes. That empathetic thing actually works. It's one of my, without patting myself on the back, it's one of my gifts. Now more so than ever, I can really see a person for who they are within 5, 10, 20 minutes, maybe.
Right.
And then if something changes, okay, well, we just roll with the punches. And I say this like this. You can deal with anybody. People want to cut people out of their lives, it's not whatever. You have two options. You can, when you learn a person who they are, like Maya Angelou said, trust them, believe them, because they've showed you who they are. You can either deal with this person because you know how they are, you could deal with them accordingly because you know what to do, or you could just not deal with them at all. So
right.
One of the two. So if you have a friend that she talks behind your back, don't tell her personal shit, or him or her personal shit, and then they can still be in your circle, or just cut them out altogether.
Right.
You have those two options.
I'm a cutter.
And so am I, and so am I. Because there's no need to have any excess,
right.
But that's what it's been. So now, where I am at the age of 37, it's not where I was at the age of 25, obviously, or 32. Or 23, so I see people for their imperfections and like them for that anyway.
Right.
That's the point. That's humanity. The trouble that I have been having is, well, after the breakup before, the one with my recent ex, I was celibate for 2 years. I didn't have sex. I didn't engage in sexual activity, I'll say.
So prior to that, you were in a place where you were doing the opposite. So you said you were like a sex addict.
Right, when Clarence died, yes.
Yeah, so then how did you go from that to the opposite?
Junior and I met because of sex, which is the honest, weirdest thing. But our relationship wasn't based on it. My ex and I, we met because of sex. And our relationship
What do you mean because of sex?
Meaning we met as like a hookup type of situation.
And then it turned into more.
And then it turned into more.
Got it.
So it was just sex with my ex and I. And then when there was no sex, we realized that we didn't like each other.
You didn't have a base other than that.
We didn't like each other. Didn't understand each other. I mean, how do you tell somebody after all these years, you finally having, I think that's what I was saying before, you finally having a long conversation, a long sit down, like chill conversation, like during Hurricane Sandy. And you say, wow, I never knew that. I really want to get to know you. How do you say that to someone that you've been with for all these years? I really want to get to know you.
But here's the thing. I don't think it's ever actually too late to say that. It's not easy to say it. No, it's not easy to say it. Like, because it's like, well, damn, what have we been doing?
This was a general conversation about my favorite food.
But what are we doing what have we been doing for all these years? But I think that happens to more people than we think.
Right.
I think there's a lot of people, particularly people that are married and people with children, right? Because it's so easy, I think, to make your life all about a certain thing. So like you're married, now you have these kids, you can make it all about these kids, or like, you have a business or whatever the case may be. But it's easy, I think, easier than people realize, to get super focused on a thing that's outside of your relationship. And because you're so focused on something, it feels like the right thing. Like, oh, I'm really focused on making sure my business is thriving. Or I'm really focused on making sure my kids are great.
Right.
And it's easy to fall off of like the person you're with. And like, then you wake up one day and you're just like, damn, I didn't even know you like Chinese food.
See, and that's what it is.
Like,
I mean,
but I didn't, because when you're focused on something, it feels like the right thing.
Well, at that time, again, I was much younger. That translated to, you don't know me at all. I know everything there is to know about you. You know nothing about me. You never listened, so it was never about me. And that was actually what I had to learn.
Do you watch Game of Thrones, by the way?
Of course.
Okay. What's her name?
Of course.
The redheaded chick that lived in the wildling. She was like, you know nothing, Jon Snow.
Yes.
That's just what came to my mind. It's like, you know nothing about me. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
But he liked her, and he just liked her. He liked her for who she portrayed.
Right.
And who he wanted, but it wasn't because of her.
Right.
Is
that what you felt like?
I felt like that on a regular basis, especially when it comes to communication, like just regular conversation. Like, that's not what I was trying to say. Like, do you understand? Like, I know if I know what someone's going to respond and how they're going to respond, that doesn't mean that what I need to do now is turn how I want to say this. This is my thought process then. Turn how I want to say this so they can understand. I need to just still say it how I say it.
You need to be you.
And I didn't. I always just turned it just to make you feel better. Like here's a little sugar. Let me coat this. And I'm not a sugarcoater. I'm not Charlie, and I don't own a chocolate factory. So that's not what I do.
But that's making people comfortable, but not making people comfortable with who you are.
Right.
It's like the same thing in in corporate, when you start to wear your hair different or you start to sound different. And it's like, for a while, I guess when I first started off in corporate, this is the same as relationships though. You kind of are like, well, how do I make everybody around me comfortable with who I am? So let me give it to them in small doses. Let me just not wear my hair natural the first day, but maybe I'll get to it day 10. Nah, do that shit day 1.
Yeah.
Go in there as who you are.
You do the interview to get the interview. However, you need to get the job, because that's what we do as people of color. But then once you got the job, walk in there.
Who the hell you are. And do the same thing in a relationship. Every door you walk through as the exact person you are. And if somebody doesn't like it, that's not the person for you.
I agree. I agree.
And if a job doesn't like it, sounds like a lawsuit to me. Oh,
no. I've had so many opportunities where I could sue some people. I swear.
So they're either gonna get right or you're gonna get paid.
Okay. So what it came down to that situation, to bring it back full circle. Even with that, when we first met initially, when I was introduced to his friends, I was who I am. I was who I am to my core. I can tell you a situation. We were playing cards, playing spades. And you know how spades with black people, do you play spades? Shame.
Don't revoke my black card. But
there is no black card. People stop talking about revoking our black card. We are black regardless. There's just different shades of black. Okay? There are different shades of melanin.
I'm the non-spades shade.
Well, one person was walking around and he wasn't playing, but he was asking, and this is me to my core, like my response. He was asking if he can see people's cards. And so they were showing him, but then he asked me if I could see mine. And I said, no. And he said, come on, let me see. And I said, so when you ask a question, you can either get a yes or a no answer. Today, your answer is no. You're going to have to deal with that. That is me to my core.
Right.
That is who PJ is and who will always be. He didn't care. My ex didn't care too much for that response and felt that other people were like now feeling like, because he was more of a perception type of person, cared what other people think.
Right.
I don't. I didn't. And that was like our first argument, our entire first argument ever, where it was like the most dramatic argument we've ever had, where I jumped out of a moving vehicle. Like, Charlotte, so it's a whole bunch of stuff.
Don't kill yourself over
right?
it.
No, well, see, the thing is, I don't like to argue with people. I'm really not good at it because I need to walk away because I do have, and I know my fault.
Let me walk away from this
in a moving car. In a moving car, but no, it was in a parking lot. So it wasn't like on the street. It was, we were coming to my car and I just jumped out because I couldn't take the screaming anymore. And situations happened, and then, just boom, it exploded, obviously, into something bigger. But nothing violent, guys. But his problem was that my response wasn't what he wanted to hear, but my response is who I am.
Right.
And we have to learn to allow people to be who they are and not try to be what we want them to be. So now how I know I'm ready is because I want to date someone for who they are, not who I want them to be.
Right.
I don't want you to be Junior. Damn sure don't want you to be my ex. Or I don't want you to be what Instagram or what all these other people, all these other social media makes you think that you should be. I want you to be who you are. And I want to love you for that. I think I'm a good guy. I have my shit. We all have our shit.
Right.
I'm sarcastic. Deal with it. I mean, I can roll with the punches just the same way. At the same time, I'm sensitive. I'm caring. I pay attention to detail. I listen. I do talk a lot about myself. So I need you to listen to a lot of things that I say.
That's what Geminis do. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's right. Because you're a Gemini, right?
No, I'm an Aquarius.
It's just the same shit. You're in our bubble.
I don't know the signs like
you're
that.
You're in our bubble. You're in the Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, Sagittarius.
Okay, got it.
And then we kind of add Leo to it.
So I want to talk a little bit about celibacy because you went back to that after your last relationship, and also right now you're celibate. Mm-hmm. So why do you do that, and is it hard, and how do other people take it?
So celibacy is not easy at all. There are different definitions of celibacy. There are different ranges. I am not holding myself out for marriage. I am just learning my worth, knowing my worth, and not wasting my worth. When I made the choice the first time, it was because I had to flush him out of me in every literal sense of that word. Mm-hmm. I may have put myself in situations where I have maybe seen things, as a gay man. We have our own community that, we can go places and just see people having sex, mm-hmm. but we don't have to participate. I may have done things like that. I have done things like that.
Doesn't that just make the temptation greater?
It's so stupid. So
I'm not having sex, but I'm just going to watch it.
I'm going to go watch it. And then later, but at the same time, it just makes
I'm not drinking, but I'm just going to stop by this bar.
And just open every bottle and just smell it. It's just ooh, this is, I remember what this smells like.
I love the smell of champagne.
I do.
Prosecco, though?
I do. But there came a point when I had to learn, as I was saying before, our relationship itself was built on sex. So then when there came a time with the health issue where we couldn't have sex mm-hmm. On a consistent basis, and then we realized we didn't like each other. Mm-hmm. Or at least I realized I did not like him. He realized, I don't think he realized that because he just needed somebody to take care of him.
Right.
And then that's a bigger conversation, when we understand why are we in a relationship with this person? Is it because we love them? Is it because we're holding on to something? Is it because it's something that we need? It's such deeper conversations to break down. But I started to realize that people only want people for one thing sometimes. And it took me roughly around 30 years to realize that I am not an unattractive person. I really thought that I was highly unattractive. Such a low self-esteem when it came to my looks, and very body shaming or anything like that, which, mind you, I'm not obese or thick or heavy.
No, you're a good-looking dude. I don't know why you would think that.
That's stuff that you hold on to from childhood.
Yeah.
So that's things that you have to actually mature and grow into. For those who don't know, when you see this, there'll be a promo photo with it. But I was always told that I look like Dwayne Martin and then Kirk Franklin. But then I was a fat baby. So I was and a big child. And then just a flamboyantly child of just overly when the little kids you see hey, that was me. So, which is why do my parents really, are you serious? You didn't know that this child was going to be gay?
Did you always know you were gay?
Yes. I knew I was different. I didn't realize that the definition of it was gay until maybe about like 12.
And your parents didn't know, or they did?
They
just
did.
Didn't want to.
They just didn't want to.
Got it.
You know, come on now. I have to show you some pictures when I was a child, and I'm like standing with my leg like this.
Hey, Mom.
Hi. So what I chose to do is like get to know who I am more. And once I finally realized who I was, okay, then I started having sex again. I just, okay, I did again. And then just recently...
Do you feel like when you went back to having sex that first time that you went celibate, did it feel different because then you did have some growth and you did know who you were? Like, did it actually just the act itself, like, did it feel different because of the way you saw yourself?
Yes, it did. It did. It wasn't as gratifying as I thought it was. Sex, we all need sex. We do. And we're sexual creatures. Mm-hmm. However, the reason why people have sex does not always translate to the same. You know, right. Some people need it because they can't do anything without it. Some people, it's their love languages, their touch. They need something like that. Others feel like they're insecure unless they do have sex. I had all of those embodied in one. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I had a conversation with my therapist, and she was telling me that you've associated your body with your self-worth. Mm. Do you know who you are without it? Because, you know,
major key.
Yeah. And the bigger part was I was 265 pounds when I left the last relationship. In like 3 months, I dropped 60 pounds.
Damn.
I was in the gym 5 times a week.
Wow.
Yeah. I wouldn't say 3 months. Actually, I'm sorry, 6 months. I lost. That's a little dramatic. That's like, hey, can you go to the doctor? No, but so I became very like self-conscious, like one of those quote unquote Instagram models who think they got everything because they look so good. But you know, and then I would get mad when people would approach me in a way that was filthy or vulgar. But I'm putting stuff out that's right. Which is a whole nother other conversation. Now it's very different. I don't need sex the way I did before. Even now, as I'm celibate now. What
made you go celibate again this time? Because it's been what? You said 6 months?
It's been 6 months. We're just starting out, guys. This phase again. This is the second rollout. This time it is for someone. Before it wasn't. Before it was for me. Mm-hmm. This time it is for someone. Meaning, now this is going to sound really fucked up.
Okay. Thanks for prefacing.
Okay, the disclaimer, guys, this is going to sound really cocky and arrogant, but I already know what I can do in sex. I already know.
Stroke game tight.
I'm not going to lie. I mean, and this is not being arrogant or anything, but I already know how I can make someone feel.
Right.
And what people have a tendency to do is confuse lust and love.
Right.
So they start liking you and then loving you because the way you make their body feel.
Right.
You know, I already got, look, I can just play around with
I already know how to get your body. So if I wanted to get that first, I could.
I know how to turn your engine on.
Got it.
I don't need your keys. I can do it myself.
I could hotwire a car like no other.
Boom. And so what it is now is I want you to like me for me. I really want you to get to know me for me. Mm-hmm. So, how interesting, even though so I was having a conversation with the one, I'm also producing another podcast that's in reference to celibacy. I was having a conversation with her. I was on my way here. Mm-hmm. And someone that I had dated or was going to date, mm-hmm. In the interim of after my ex. So it was that was another one who was like immediately after, but I was like, I'm not having sex. Because I didn't have sex with him, he thought there was something wrong with him.
Because he was associating his body and his sex with his worth. When you didn't give him that, it was like, what do you not like about me? What is wrong with my body? What is wrong with me physically? Mm-hmm. Because that was his association. And that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, especially, and this was another, qualm that I had in my head, because if you go down his Instagram feed, it's just like ass. You know what I mean? It's like ass, and it's really nice. I mean, come on, like you have to have something deeper about yourself. You're attractive. There has to be something else. There's another layer to you. Don't let that be the thing that gets you in the door.
Right. When you tell people that you're celibate, so maybe people like you're dating or thinking about dating, do they almost then feel like it's a challenge?
You get one or two responses.
Hell no, or I'll be the one to break this.
Yeah. Actually, yes, exactly. That's those little responses. I've gotten from somebody that I was really, really, really interested in. He walked in on the conversation, so it wasn't like I had to break it to him. And then we talked about it later, and he said, I tend to when I find out guys are celibate, I tend to not date them because that means they're on their own journey. I'm like, no, that's hogwash. Hogwash. I think of other words to say like that popped in my head. It's crazy. But I was like, that's nonsense. No, that's just completely different. That's not right. And or the ones that'd be like, oh, you think you are. So let me go to the bathroom.
You think you are because you haven't met me yet,
right? Like boom, like I'm gonna like this is the same. That's the equal value of a homosexual man and a heterosexual woman, or vice versa, thinking that the other person's going to change them.
You're right. Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Now it's one of those things where it's like it doesn't come up until usually someone makes a passes at someone, which is usually them make a pass at me. I'll make a pass at them. I'll flirt with them. I'm also very flirtatious, which is the other issue that I have to work on. You
can't be flirtatious and celibate.
I know,
Pick
but
your struggle.
and again, this is the Libra struggle. We're flirtatious people, so I mean, like I'm charming. So I mean, like I already know. I mean, look, I've accepted who I am, but I can't tease.
Right.
People.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I know how far I can and can't go. And I'm happier. And that was the thing that made me come back to it. Because during that time, the first time was probably the most focused I've ever been. And,
was it hard though?
No pun intended. But yeah.
All the time.
All the time. Do not ride the train with someone who is like, I can't get on crowded trains. So, but it was. And now I don't think it's not as much now because I have a different view of it.
Right. So it's not about like feeling like, oh, I'm missing something now. It's just sort of like being on your own journey and like realizing that.
No. So what I was saying before it was one thing, which was that the own journey and everything. Now it's for someone. Not necessarily saving it for the right one, but not just anyone.
Right.
You know what I mean? Random casual sex just doesn't work for me, especially at this age. Like, come on, man. Like, seriously. Like, you still doing that?
The thing is, it's just like, it's the same result. After a while, it's like, you've been down this road. Like, what else could you possibly gain? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, meh.
Yeah, right. Like, and then once it's done and we're like, one of us are washing whatever residue off of our bodies, then it's just like, what now?
Yeah. Like you need more. At a certain point, you need more.
Like, who's going to call the Uber?
And when you need, right. And I think when you truly start to need more and you recognize like, I just can't do that anymore. It's when you realize your worth. It's like, I need more because I am more. And not that I'm not knocking like casual sex or anybody. Like I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying like there just comes a point in life where you need more than basic stuff. And whether that be sex, whether that be dating, whether that just be being around a person who doesn't really know you and get you, like there comes a point when you realize you are more, so you need more to fill that.
Now let me ask you. Let me throw this in here. What do you think is the easiest way when you're having a conversation with someone that you're trying to get to know to actually have a conversation where it's like 100% vulnerable? Like, what do you think is the easiest way?
The easiest way is to be vulnerable yourself. So I'm like I'll say anything on a first date. Like, I don't mind telling you everything about myself on a first date. And for some people, that's really like, I don't know why she's giving me all that TMI, or like, we're not there yet. And then for some people, that's like, oh my God, like, I just really want to tell her more. And like, I really want to know more. And like, those have been the ones that have turned into relationships for me and lasting relationships. And like the relationship I'm in now, like I was spilling my guts, like, the second time we talked to each other. Like, it was just like we had a series of conversations on the phone because I was away. But it was just like I was just saying everything and anything because, like, that was just me. And I was okay with that. And it's the right person when they're not just okay with it, but they're like, I love that. Oh, my God.
Attentive and everything.
Yeah. And so, like, I say the sooner the better.
So I want to add another layer to that. Really quick.
Are you asking for a friend?
No, I want to actually also give the listeners some ideas in general when it comes down to this. But this is an extreme layer. The best conversation to have, or the best way to have a conversation where you really want the other person to be vulnerable, I have found is when both parties are naked.
But without sex?
Without sex.
I guess I've never had that conversation.
Look, everybody, look. You see how she paused, and her face at that moment was like, "Wait, what?
Why are we naked?
Why are we naked?" And the reason why I say that is because our clothes hide our imperfections, how we see ourselves.
Right.
And again, and maybe this may be an extreme label because I also am a nudist. So for me, it's easier.
What do you mean? Where are you nude in New York? In your apartment?
I'm nude when I go to the mailbox naked. I mean, it just doesn't bother me.
Wait, so you leave the doors of your apartment and you walk down to your mailbox?
My mailbox, but that's
naked
with some flip flops on. Yeah,
and nobody in your building is saying anything.
I have been seen.
And what do they say?
I just say hello and walk back upstairs. It's happened several times. I have walked somebody out.
Hold on, let me see if I could maybe try it later.
Well, you can't, not where you live.
The way this building is set up, there's a lot of cameras.
There's a lot of cameras. There are none in mine.
Okay.
But at the same time, I also go to nude beaches. I was raised pretty much predominantly by a nudist family.
Really?
Yeah, my parents walked around naked for a while up until my father did up until he realized his son was gay. And he was just like, yeah, so I'm not going to be showing this anymore.
Wow.
So I've always been very, like, my family, we talk about gas. We talk about all types of stuff that people are so prudish about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's...
Yeah, I guess I've never really been in, like, a nude culture.
So I mean, and the easiest way to do that, honestly, and I promote this to everyone, is to go to a nude beach. It changes your perception about people altogether, and it changes your perception about yourself and your insecurity.
Yeah, I've never even been to a nude beach. Like, even in places where they have them, like in Europe, like I've never.
They have them here.
Where?
There's Sandy Hook in Jersey, in Gunnison Beach. So that's pretty much where I've been.
You know where my concern would be, though? I'd be like, is there people taking pictures? Like, I always think I'm gonna end up on the internet in some weird form.
And seeing what comes down was that you can't worry about stuff like that. Because
that's true.
It's that thing of the energy that you put out is what you're going to get back. So when you don't think about things like that, honestly, they kind of don't happen.
Right. I agree with that.
And I went last year for the first time, and then that's all I would never ever really want to go to another beach again if I had to wear clothes. And I thought it was going to be
this is a clothed beach? No, thanks.
So I thought as a man, I shouldn't do that because my organs are external. So if you see me, hey, I'm excited.
Right.
I did not get aroused the entire time except twice. And that was once when I was laying on my back and he was, not laying on my back, I'm sorry, I was laying on my stomach because that would have been like a really, whoa. Laying on my stomach, he was rubbing oil on my back. So I got aroused. And then the other time, somebody was walking around with yellow Speedos. That's it. There's vagina. I have never seen so much vagina in all my life. Ever. All different shapes and colors and sizes. And
they all look very different.
Very different.
No two are alike. They're like snowflakes. Vaginas are like snowflakes. No two are alike.
So I'm also a Gold Star gay, so I've never slept with a woman because I've always known I was gay.
Okay. I just have to say, I'm sorry, but like gay people love to brag when they are Gold Star. They love to do it.
I'm
like,
almost a platinum, but
I can't, like, I have heard this a lot of times. I'm a Gold Star lesbian. I've never been with a man. It's like, great. Good for you.
I'm sorry.
I'm a Gold Star gay.
I would be a platinum, but I was a vagina.
What's a platinum?
A C-section baby. So that means they've never even inserted the vaginal canal.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I literally haven't even been through one.
Yeah. So, but I was vaginal, so I'm not a platinum, unfortunately. But I say that to say, even going to the beach itself and then seeing men, all different shapes and sizes, all different likes and colors and shapes and lengths and things of that nature and fatness and whatever, I didn't get aroused. And it teaches people to look people in the eye, number one. and to see them for who they are and not being a pervert.
Right.
You know, and I mean, I hugged a woman. Our genitals touched. It's just like, oh my God.
You're not a platinum.
Right. But it was such a great experience. So from that, I took having conversations. Like we were actually like having real deep in depth conversations just on the beach. And then from that, let's say I met someone and they want to come over. All right, guess what? Take your clothes off. You can keep your underwear on. If you're comfortable with.
So when people come in, I tell them take their shoes on, but I'm gonna take it to take their shoes off, but I'm gonna take it to another level. I'm gonna be like, okay, remove your shoes and
fold your clothes right there.
And fold your clothes. You can put them on the couch.
You see my face? She's like cracking up. I'm very dead serious. But it's not perversion,
right?
You know, and at the same time, most people who know me know, number one, if you've been to my house, if any of my friends have known, they have seen my penis or they have seen my ass at some point because I just walk around naked. It's just who I am. I don't care.
So when you go home after this, you know, like
the first thing I do is it's a trail.
Wow.
It's a trail. I mean, I'm starting to actually unbuckle as I'm walking up the stairs. I mean, I'm not even lying.
Huh. Okay. I'm going to do an exercise for myself. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go to one of the nude beaches. And my goal is going to be to have a conversation with 3 people.
Looking at everybody being free, and because we're born naked and we die naked. Right. We just die with clothes on, but you know.
Are you going to be buried naked?
Am I going to? I'm going to be cremated.
Oh, okay.
I would prefer to be cremated.
Okay.
So then that would be
not to be morbid, but I was just you'd probably want to be.
But then you have an open casket that's naked. That's just so much.
You know what? Keep it natural. Just do a little leaf. Or a big leaf, depending on where you at.
Yeah, it wouldn't. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, and that's another thing for a guy. Like, here's the thing, guys, our penis lengths measure everything about a guy's ego for the most part.
Right.
When you see a guy walking around as proud as he is with the smallest little thing, you will feel so much better about yourself no matter what size you are. I mean, it really helps you with your own self-esteem.
Right.
And not to say other people's imperfections help you, but it helps you embrace yours.
Wow. Okay, so before we go out today or head out today, and before I go to my nudist beach tomorrow, which I will be doing.
Yeah.
It seems like you really had an evolution in terms of your first love and then the tragedy that happened there and him passing away and then, you know, learning about yourself through that and then getting in another relationship, finding out what was wrong, what you didn't want. For somebody who maybe wanted to speed up that process, what would you tell them are like the top things, like if you want to learn yourself, do these things? Because we learn the hard lessons, so I'm trying to speed it up for our listeners.
And so the main part about it is that no one can tell you anything. Mm-hmm. Meaning no one can tell you don't do that, because there's a lesson in that. If you don't do that, you're going to keep repeating the same thing until you've learned that lesson.
Right.
So experience it. You have to. You have to. In order to know what it is that you want, you have to experience what you don't want. Mm-hmm. But to speed up the process, don't think about what you don't want, because all you're going to keep getting is what you don't want.
Yep.
Start thinking about what it is that you want. Start thinking about what it is that you deserve. Start putting that energy out, because whatever, again, once I started living in this creative life and started, like, you know, writing and acting and doing all these things, and I started like really focusing on energy and like what it is that I want, it really started coming to pass when I started putting out more positivity, more what it is that I wanted. When it comes to trying, there's really no way to speed up that real process, at least in my opinion. If you have to just have some sense of self-awareness. You have to know who you are.
Right.
You can't want something if you don't. RuPaul says it all the time. If you don't love anybody, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? You know what I mean? And that's true. I mean, if you don't, you can't blame them for not loving you.
The first person you have to love is yourself.
Right. You can't blame them for not loving you if you don't love you. You know, you can't blame someone for how they treated you if, number one, you allowed that to happen. So You allowed that, like just like we said earlier.
Yep.
You just can't all of a sudden switch on them
Right.
because then it becomes out of the norm. You know, you've been okay with me staying out 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Now all of a sudden, now you got an issue with it. You know, it has to be consistent. But I think that the core of it really comes down to learning who you are as whatever you are, wherever you are in your life. And it's just know it's going to change and evolve as you get older, because I am so not the same person I was last year or the year before that, or the year before that. You know,
Don't become stuck in who you were in the past, I think is a good.
That's the important. That's
because I think we can
thing.
sometimes hold on to that in really bad ways, where we hold on so much to the person we were instead of having an evolution and being the person we could be and a better person. We're just like, but this is who I've always been. But it's like, if it wasn't doing you good,
it wasn't serving you then.
Then why are you doing it?
Indy Irie has this song, "I Choose." The song is this, and it was like, here I am now looking at 30 and I got so much to say.
Yep.
You know the song I'm talking about?
Yep, I do.
Yeah, and you know, I've been in so many chaotic circumstances, but I define myself. Guys, listen to the lyrics of this song, because I can't think of it right now without singing it. I'm going to put it on the site. Without singing it, I can't do it.
Well, go ahead and drop a verse on
So
us.
what we're not going to do. What we're not going to do. And there's a part of that song where she's saying, no matter what it is that we have been through, we have managed to get out of whatever it was. And our past does not define who we are. So don't get stuck in your past life and how you saw things, how you saw yourself yesterday. Is not probably going to be the same way you see yourself today. And if it's not, it's okay, because you are evolving. We change. And things happen to those who change. If you stay the same 9 times out of 10, then you haven't learned a lesson yet.
Yeah.
So
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on. So before we go, though, can you tell us about your podcast?
Sure, yes. Currently, there is Highly Melanated. That is hosted between myself, PJ Ryan, also Yushi, Blair Tate, and Red. You can find us on you can follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, but we're also available on iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Pod, but it's iTunes, Google Play, also, etc. And that's just us 4 individuals, earth, wind, fire, and water. We're all elements.
I'm sorry, I just thought of Captain Planet.
That's how we
Earth, wind, water, fire.
There's just no heart. And we're just having conversations that for us, people of color, we just have conversations about what it is to be black in America in this day and age. Different comments, like one of our episodes was about gentrification, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh my God, I'm sorry, I just have to get this out because I just thought of it. Your theme song should be, it's like, Captain Colors, we're the heroes, gonna take racism down to 0.
Okay.
You know, it's like,
okay.
It's like, Donald Trump, you'll pay for this. 'Cause, you know, there's like, Captain Planet, you'll pay for this. Like, Donald Trump, you'll pay for this. And then you do one of like the wind or the water at him, and then you just kind of like splash him out.
I'm gonna let them hear this. I will.
Okay, let them know.
We haven't talked about Trump because Trump is very depressing.
Right.
And I've been in my bubble.
Don't talk about what you don't want.
I also have another project, Willing and Waiting. Not sure, actually. Probably by the time this comes out, we should have actually put out our first episode. That one is about celibacy from a male's perspective and a female's perspective. That will be with myself and Blair, who is also JBT Dub, because her name is Jessica Blair Tate White. So she has so many different names, right?
Names.
Yeah, so that's her actual birth name. The project that I have on my own, it's called the Dare You Project. It's a storytelling podcast where I have guys come on. It was initially birthed as a safe space for men of color to be vulnerable and talk. But it is no longer just limited to men of color. It's primarily for us. But women are more than welcome to come on board, because it's important that we as a people tell our stories, because if we don't, who will?
Right.
And when they tell it, they won't tell it the right way or the way it was.
Yep.
So yeah, those are the projects that I currently have.
Nice. Well, we'll link them on the website.
Yes.
And check those out. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much, Tanisha, for having me here. I really appreciate this. This is fun.
Yes.
And I'm gonna take another sip. Hold on.
That's the slurp sound effect. I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Please reach out. Let me know what you think of the show at Tanisha Wood on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And until next time, wish me love. Hello again, my lovely listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of DRL. If you like the show, be sure to go on iTunes and leave a rating and also write a review. And don't forget to share with your friends and tell them all about DRL. Thank you so much for supporting.